Hello friends and welcome to Yoga for Techies. In today's episode, we're not going to be practicing, but we're going to take some time and talk about what is it that you need to start a yoga practice, specifically in terms of equipment. Yoga these days is a multi-million dollar industry. Pretty much anywhere you go, you see a lot of yoga merchandise being sold, and you sort of tend to think that you need to buy all of the latest high-tech, expensive gear from all of the fashionable yoga stores in order to start practicing yoga. Well, that is a myth. I mean, you can still do it and then spend the money, but essentially, you don't really need a lot. So in today's video, I'm going to break down the basic essentials that you can use, and some of them can actually be used from the stuff that you have around your house in order to start practicing yoga. So before you go out to your favorite yoga store and spend a few $100s on a pair of yoga shorts, watch this video and then make a decision what you want to do. So let's get started. Okay, so the first prop that we're going to cover is the most essential prop in the entire yoga, and that prop is your yoga mat. You can't do a yoga practice without a yoga mat. Well, you actually can. It will most likely consist of more of a standing postures, but pretty much all the other postures you will be shit out of luck in terms of trying to get them done. And the reason for that is because, well, actually two reasons. First of all, you'll be sliding all over the floor or the surface. And if you're doing it on a rough surface, then it's not going to be very pleasant for your hands and for your feet. And number two, it's not very pleasant to stand on your knees on a hard surface for prolonged periods of time, especially if you have sharp knees like I do. So that's why people who are much smarter than us invented the yoga mat. Now, how do you choose a yoga mat? There are cheaper yoga mats and they are very expensive yoga mats. Personally, for me, and the intent of this video is to make sure that you don't go out and shell hundreds and hundreds of dollars on yoga equipment. The things to look in your yoga mat, well, personally for me, are two things. First of all is the thickness of your mat. The thicker the mat, the more padding you will get, which is really good for your elbows, your hands, your knees, your neck, your crown of the head. So this is really super important. So for beginners, I would strongly advise getting something that is at least 1 centimeter or half an inch thick in terms of the thickness of the yoga mat. The second thing to look for is the actual pattern or the surface of the yoga mat. So in this case, I've got two yoga mats. This one here is a very smooth mat. On the other side, it's got a bit of a pattern, and offers a little bit more traction. This is a more advanced yoga mat, which I use for my personal practice. This one over here, it's got a little bit more pattern, and it's really good in terms of traction. Now, why do you need traction? For obvious reasons. You don't want to be sliding with your hands and your feet on your yoga mat until you get pretty much the hang of the postures. You want to make sure that you really feel very supported on the mat. And the second, if you take one of the hot yoga classes where you go into an environment and it's really hot and you do yoga, that's what the name stands for, you're going to be dripping your sweat on the mat. And if you have a mat which is very smooth, very soon the mat will turn into a skating rink. So you don't want to do that. So get yourself a mat with some patterns, something with a rough surface that you cannot slide on. Now, in terms of material, how important is the actual material? Obviously, the more expensive the mats are, the better the material. It's more durable, it doesn't absorb smells, it's very washable. So try to find a balance where you can get a yoga mat anywhere, somewhere, I would say, between $20 to $50. I wouldn't necessarily pay more than that unless you are very, very particular about your yoga mats. But for beginners, just to get started, that's what I would suggest. The thickness of the mat, the surface, make sure that it's nice and grainy, that you can slide, and obviously something that is a good value in terms of material, something that doesn't absorb smells, something that is easy washable, and obviously you don't want to be spending more than $50 on the mat. Okay, let's move on to the second most essential prop in yoga, the yoga block. So why do you need blocks in yoga? The answer is very simple. You use the blocks to bring the ground closer to you. What the heck does that mean? Well, if you are leaning down, trying to reach down to the ground when holding a posture, and there's this much space between your foot or your hand or your elbow, you can use the block to bring the ground closer to you so you can perform the pose. This is super important for beginners because obviously you don't have the range of motion, the flexibility is not there, and you want to maintain the pose. You want to extract the benefits of the pose without breaking or injuring yourself. Now, technically, yoga can be done without blocks, but for beginners or novices, blocks are highly recommended. So what do you look for when buying a block? First of all, you as a beginner would look for something that is big. So I've got two blocks here. You can see that the blue block is much bigger than the gray block. And the reason why this is good is because when you place it on the ground, the surface area of the block gives you much more stability. So I feel much more stable with my elbow on a big block than on a smaller block. This is very wobbly. This is very stable. So having a big block is good for beginners. Now, in terms of the material, these are foam blocks. They're very, very light, and they're also very, very cheap. You can pretty much, even if I throw the block, you can't really hurt anyone. There's also something, these types of blocks, they're made out of cork. They have this natural cork feel to them, almost feels like a wooden block. But the downside is that, first of all, they're a little bit heavier, but that brings a bit of stability to the blocks, but they're also much more expensive. So if you want to save money on your yoga props and you want to start on the budget, then strongly suggest getting a foam block on the bigger size. And if you have a little bit more money to spend, go and get yourself a wooden or a cork block. Now, if you absolutely have to practice and you don't have your blocks, or your favorite store is closed, or Amazon is having a shutdown, you can always use the book. So find a big book. In this case, I have 2100 asanas. This is a very good heavy book. Or for the technology inclined in us, the product manager's desk reference. So you can use the books in the same way as the blocks. Unfortunately, because the books are a little bit less solid than the blocks, you can't really put them on different sides. So you're kind of limited only to one size. But if you have a lot of these books, you can stack them and you can pretty much do the same thing with books as you would do with blocks. But this is a temporary solution. So do yourself a favor and get some blocks. Okay, prop number 3 in yoga is a bolster. That's right. I have a whole stack of them here. This is a special yoga bolster. I mean, it's not really a yoga bolster, it's just a bolster. And it's really is like a big pillow, very sturdy. And we can actually use the yoga bolster for a number of different reasons. First of all, we can sit on a yoga bolster. We can sit like this. We can straddle it, and we can use it for our meditation practice when we need to have a tall spine. Really helps with elevating your hips. Now, once again, if you want to save some money, you don't have to buy these bolsters, or you just really need one. In essence, you can always get a pillow. Just make sure that the pillow is very firm. You don't want to have a super feathery down filled pillow because it's going to be too soft and it's not going to provide the support that you need. Now, I like to have a couple of bolsters just because in some poses you would want to stack them up. But once again, don't break your budget and buy a gazillion of bolsters. Just one bolster is sufficient. And make sure, and when buying these bolsters, is that when you get a bolster, it has a nice zipper that you can unzip, you can remove the bolster, and you can wash it. That is a really cool feature and worth paying the money for. I think I got this for about 20 or 30 bucks. So that's the bolster. Now, if you don't have the bolster, as I said, you can use the pillow. You can also use a blanket. So this is a really big and fluffy couch blanket. And it does serve the same. If you fold it multiple times, it does serve the same purpose. Now, you can use blanket for its intended purpose, like a blanket to cover yourself, especially when you're doing a corpse pose and you're freezing. Hopefully that is not the case. Or you can use it for the same purpose as the bolster by rolling it together and really propping up your neck, your lower back, and your knees, especially when you're doing lying down poses. Everyone has a blanket. If you don't have a blanket, I think that's just weird. But if you do, find the one and keep it near the place where you practice in yoga. Definitely worth having one. And that's prop number 3. Let's move on to the final prop that you will need for yoga practice, prop number 4. Okay, the final prop, the fourth prop, is a belt or a strap. Now this strap here came with my yoga mat, so you can get a yoga mat with a strap and you can actually use it to you can use the strap for carrying your yoga mat like so, which makes it really handy. But you can also use the strap as a rope. And this is really good for a number of different postures. Sometimes when we're trying to reach around and we can't quite get there, we can use the strap to help us pull ourselves. So I can, for example, put it on my foot and I can reach behind my back and I can pull myself, and that gives me a little bit more torque, a little bit more twist towards this area. It's just one of the uses. You can also create a loop on the strap and you can extend your legs and you can pull on your strap to straighten out your leg, work the muscles, work the hamstrings. There's many different uses of the belt in yoga, which I sprinkle throughout my practices. Now, what happens if you don't have a specialized yoga strap that came with your yoga mat? Not a problem. You can always get a belt from your pants, or if you have a bathrobe, you can also use the bathrobe thing from the bathrobe. So you can use that as well. This works just like any rope. And if you don't have a bathrobe, you can just get any rope. Same idea. And obviously, with some handiwork, you can create a nice loop in your bathrobe. You can thread it and you can use it the same way as you would use a strap, like so. So that is really the only these are really the only 4 things that you need for your yoga practice. So there we have it. These are the only 4 essential props that you will need in your beginner yoga practice. A yoga mat, a yoga block, a bolster or a pillow or a towel, and a belt, strap, or a rope. All of these things, maybe with the exception of the yoga mat, you can source around the house. The point of this video was to show you that you can start practicing yoga without breaking the bank. So don't rush to your neighborhood yoga store and shell out hundreds and hundreds of dollars on yoga props, because the only really thing that you need is your yoga mat. Everything else can be sourced around the house, and hopefully I was able to save you some money and also inspire you to practice yoga with the things that you have around your house. If you found the information in this video useful, and also if you save some money, please like this video and subscribe to my channel so that you can get notified of any new videos that I post about yoga and how it can be applicable for our tech-savvy lives. My name is Kieran, and see you around.